right now. Okay. So, how are you doing? You okay? Reuben? Hello? Reuben, are you there? Reuben?
Sorry, I got cut off.
No worries. I am glad you're back. Just a moment. Okay, now you're back. Sorry about the glitch, but I'm glad you managed to get back in. So how are you doing today?
Doing good.
Okay. Just give me a second as we wait for maybe one or two people, and then we'll get going.
Yep.
Okay. So we wait for maybe one or two people, and then we'll get going. We wait for maybe one or two people. Okay. I think right now it's 11:02. We can start. Our friends who are not able to probably listen in with us right now, they will be able to watch our video at the end. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take this moment to thank you, Reuben, because you accepted my invite to sit down with me today to have this conversation about, your journey from all the way from your country of origin to actually here in Canada. And we want to get to know you. You quite an inspiration in the African community or among the people I've interacted with. So I really I felt privileged and honored actually to have you today. So I thank you so much. For some of you who don't know, Reuben is one of the lost boys of Sudan. We'll be able to talk more about it in when we start conversing more. But how I got to know Reuben in Winnipeg, actually, he's a project manager at Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, and that organization does amazing work. And I got to know Reuben and his story, and I wanted to share it with you all. So welcome, Reuben.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you know, I know a little bit about you, but I want our viewers, our supporters, and our friends who don't know who you are, for you to tell them about yourself, your country of origin, where you come from, and also when did you move to Canada?
Thank you for having me here this morning. I'm happy to talk about who I am and my experience from where I came to Canada, before I came to Canada. I came here 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
and I was born in what is today South Sudan,
Okay.
one of the newest countries in the world.
Okay.
And I I am a father of 4 kids.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and want me to talk about my journey? You say that?
Yeah, that one we are going to touch about that. So, all your children born in Canada?
Yeah, 3 of them born here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Maybe in the future we'll get to know also about the children of my grandparents, their experiences as well. But we won't be touching on that today. So, knowing that you moved here 16 years ago, you say, and I'd mentioned earlier on that you are among the lost boys of, Sudan. For some people in Canada or maybe in other countries, they might not know what, the lost boys of Sudan means. Can you please shed a light on who the lost boys are and when did you flee Sudan?
Briefly, Sudan had its independence in 1956, but before then, it has been in war for so long. Sudan is a multi-ethnic country,
Mm-hmm.
but in the 1950s and 60s, it went through transformations where the government of the Sudan was helped with the formations of the British and Egyptian governments.
Okay.
And after the formation of that government, it was a government of minorities. It empowered a group of the people of the Arab origin in the Sudan, empowered them and gave them all the powers. And so Sudan has been in a war for so long for identity, for religion, for marginalization, for so many reasons. And because of that, the war erupted again in part of the Sudan that I came from in the 1970s. And then there was a peace agreement shortly uh, in the 70s again.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the war erupted earlier, and then there was a peace agreement in the 70s. But then again, in the 1980s, 1983, another war erupted, which is the war that displaced so many people in South Sudan. So the term lost boys and girls of the Sudan is referred to young children that were posed by the conflict in the Sudan in the 1980s. And these children, some of them went up to Cuba in 1985, 86, and then others went to Ethiopia in 1986, 87, 88, 89. And some of them, that is also referred to as lost boys, left the Sudan in the 90s. So it's a term that is referred to young children or young people that left the Sudan in the 80s to the 90s. So I happen to be one of the people that left in the 80s in 1980, the end of 1986, went to Ethiopia. Most of these young people joined the war. They went there for military training. Some of them left under so many devastated situations. Others left because their families were destroyed. Others left because their villages were on fire because of the war. Others left because they lost their parents. So each and every individual have a unique story. And these young people, some of them went to Ethiopia, others went to Cuba, like I said, Kenya, Uganda, and the
Mm-hmm.
nearby countries in East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So, mhm, you have a
Continue.
question?
Sorry. No, no, no. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So in the 80s, like I said, I left and we walked from the Sudan. One of the things that is talked a lot about the history of the Lost Boys is how they walk miles and miles from the country of origin, which is Sudan, to neighboring countries. So I happened to be one of the people that went to Ethiopia and joined the military there, and went back to the Sudan. And in the 90s, I had the opportunity to go to Kenya and become a refugee again. So I stayed there in Kenya before I moved to Canada.
Okay. So you mentioned you first fled to Ethiopia. How long were you in Ethiopia and then going back, join the army, and then fleeing now to Kenya?
It was 1997, from the beginning of 1997
Hmm.
to 1990. So around 3 years in Ethiopia, and then 1990 to 1991. Then I went to Kenya.
So when you went to Kenya, were you in any refugee camp or you went straight to the capital?
Yes, I went to Kenya as a refugee. So I went to one of the largest refugee camps in Kenya called Kakuma.
Okay.
I stayed there that's the northern part of Kenya. And then 1995, I left that refugee camp again and went to another larger refugee camps in Kenya called Dadaab.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there, northeastern part of Kenya. That's where I stayed until on the time I came here to Canada.
So, seeing all the factors that led you to flee, how was life now in the camps? Now that you're displaced, you're living in a refugee camp. How was life like in?
There's a lot of stories that some of them are horrible stories. Others are stories of resiliency, and life in general. Life is not easy, but you can imagine that if you left your country at a younger age, you found yourself in a situation where you live with other children, no adult, and in a military setting, joining the war, uh, crossing borders, working on food. It's not easy. There's so many things that happen, death, hunger, suffering of
Mhm.
all kinds. Yeah, so it has not been very easy life, but here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So, were you able to connect with your family um, during all that journey?
I had not had a chance. So when I left my own parent at
Yeah.
home, and they died later on. I haven't seen them. My whole family was scattered. I just had 2013. Actually, had a story here in Winnipeg when I tried to went back to go to my homeland to visit it. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that was to see whether I could be able to go and you know um, get a sense of where my parents were buried and maybe reburied them so that I could have a closure.
Mm-hmm.
It did not happen. It's very unfortunately when I was in Uganda, another war broke out in my own country. So I did not manage to go back home. But some of my siblings fled the war, and I was able to meet with them in Uganda. That's after decades of separations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so with today, the world is getting smaller with technologies and all that. So I'm able to connect with my siblings and their families and my extended family. But I lost a lot of relatives, including my own parents, and
I'm sorry.
mhm.
I'm sorry. It seems I'm from Uganda and I'm so close to Sudan, but hearing about the stories from Sudan, it always actually breaks my heart to know that it was so close to home and people were losing their lives. So I'm sorry about that. So now you're in Kenya. We're trying to move, taking the journey. You're in Kenya. You moved from Kakuma to Dadaab. Kakuma to Dadaab, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you applied for to relocate to Canada from Dadaab?
Yes.
And how long did it take for you actually to be accepted and actually coming to Canada?
It wasn't easy. I went to the Navy in 1995. You
Mm,
imagine from 1995
mm,
to 2004. That's when I come. So
mm-hmm.
about 9 years
Yeah.
in the desert in the Dadaab, and by the time when we arrived in Dadaab, it was not like the Dadaab today. It
Mm-hmm.
was during the peak of the war in Somalia, so a lot of people were crossing the border from Somalia to Dadaab, to Kenya. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of refugees, and there were also a lot of militias that time, and because of the war, so it was a very insecure camps, and there was a lot of tragedies in the camps. I remember, some of the nights when camps got attacked in the middle of the night. A lot of shooting.
In the
Family lost in the camps. Yeah, it was like a military zone because there was a lot of
there was no protection.
I think you could imagine and appreciate that anybody that has been in a refugee camp would appreciate and see if a refugee camp is situated in a war zone, in a place closer to war.
Mm,
It's difficult to provide security that you think the UNHCR would do.
mm-hmm.
The UNHCR staff would be escorted to the refugee camps in the morning, but what happened when they go back?
Oh,
Uh, there was a very yeah. There's a lot of violence in the camps at night by the bandits, people that had guns in their hands, and the militias that were fighting for different reasons, and sometimes they come to the camp to take goats, and from the Somalis, refugees that had goats, and yeah, and they do all kind of violence.
I'm glad you, after 9 years, you were able to actually come to Canada. So you accepted and given refugee in Canada. Then you come to Canada in 2004.
Yes.
Did you come straight to Winnipeg or you arrived in a different city?
I actually landed in Calgary for 5 days, and I was at the receptions, and had relative here, including my younger brother. So I wanted to come here to Winnipeg. So I actually left, and then I came to Winnipeg after 5 days in Calgary. It was very interesting because upon my arrival here, I wasn't received as a newcomer because I landed in another province.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
did not even qualified for housing for a newcomer. Went to welcome place, and they look at the document and say, you know, um, you came here, but you landed in Calgary, so you're not entitled to some of the services that we provide because you landed in Calgary. But I had the opportunity, to be supported by my community members that I found here. One of them accommodated me with my family before we could find our apartment.
So when you moved here with your wife and one child
Yes.
and brother as well?
No, it was me, my wife, and my daughter.
Okay. So you touched on one thing here. When you arrived, you weren't perceived as, a refugee. You didn't get the support, but you managed actually to get support from your community. Were there any other challenges, as someone who has come, you've come from so horrible experiences, for so many years, and you've arrived in Canada. Did you face more challenges? What are some of the challenges you faced apart from, not receiving the support you needed from, some of the organizations?
I think what is taken for granted sometimes is that if somebody come from a situation like I described briefly to
Mm-hmm.
a place like Canada, people would think that you will not be worried and you will not have any challenge because you have come from a war zone to a great country like Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a case. Moving is a moving, whether, anybody that grown up in a different culture, move to a different culture, will always experience difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically, cultural shocking, and you can talk about the weather here, and difficulties settling in, getting a job. It's not easy. I came here when I was, I started my high school. You can imagine that. I have to do upgrading here, go to school. So, and supporting the family and also to support my community. It wasn't that very easy.
Mm-hmm.
And all the experience of what I just, touched briefly about, where I was when I was a child and some of the experience that I went through, you know, um, it's, it was very difficult. But because we went through so many other difficult experience before, we took it as a challenge too. That this is something to be navigated. This is a challenge to be overcome, and this is going to be a place to live. So we have to work. I have to work hard, to support myself and go to school, get education, but also to support my family and also to support my community.
Mm-hmm. One thing actually I want to touch on while we are still on the challenges, I can't imagine the trauma you went through, your wife went through, your child being born in the camp. Was there any support actually to help you with psychological, trauma to help you actually recover? I don't think even you can fully recover from what you went through, but was there any support?
I think when it comes to issues of mental health or psychological support, it's
Mm-hmm.
even difficult here in Western world. It's difficult in a number of ways. It's an area of stigma that people don't want to talk about. But also, we all come as I always say to people that my best life was when I was a child in a village. That's the best part of my life that I
Tell
can
me about
remember.
that. Why do you say that? Tell me about why your living in the village was your best life.
It was before the war that I mentioned to you,
Mm-hmm.
1983 erupted.
Mm-hmm.
We're blessed with a very beautiful land. We live closer to the River Nile, which is the longest rivers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In the Savannah area, it's a land that is rich. You cultivate, all kind of food. We come from a community that keep cattle. You know, it's a very beautiful life, and it was very stable. You have to live in the villages of people that have relationship for generation and generation. So even if when you are a child, you walk, from your place to a different place, somebody will ask you who you are. You say your name, and They will know you, they will know your father, they will know your mother, they will know where your great-grandfather come from. It was a very neat, beautiful life that was disrupted by the war. So coming from there, what I wanted to say that coming from there, you're coming with all your own cultures. You have tested the beauty of life before it got disrupted by the war. And you also coming from a different worldviews. Even if you left as a child, I still, as of today, don't dream in English. Like I still typical somebody from where I come from, because those my first years of life taught me a lot. So issues of psychological support are always very difficult, because you find yourself in a different culture, right? Where people use things differently, where people see things differently. But I'm happy because immediately when I arrived in Canada here, I talk about my experience. I shared uh, my stories, and that also helpful because I
That's
don't
part of,
internalize it.
so that becomes part of your healing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I know we always, as a newcomer, you always have so many challenges in adapting to the new environment. But you've talked about you managed to go back to school and acquire education and work for your family. I want us actually to discuss more about the opportunities now as a newcomer, as a refugee who came to Canada 14 years ago. What are some of the opportunities that actually you are enjoying up to today?
You know, if you wanted to talk also about life in general,
Mm-hmm.
peace is very important. It's always good to have peace, because it allows people to you know pursue their potentials. Coming to Canada here provide a lot of opportunities because there is stability, there's peace. It there is a system that is functioning for people, and so like I said, you come here, went to school, get educations, and then had the opportunity to work for the government of Manitoba, and I'm working with another great organization called Immigration Partnership Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
So there are opportunities in our community here in Canada. But I wanted also to say that there are also challenges. For people that are new, you alluded to one issue. People come from the war zone. They're coming with trauma. They are affected by the war, and they also still carried what the experience they had with them here, and the situation that their loved ones are in also affect them here. And it's a great country, great place, but there's still also thing to be done to make sure that people that are here had the opportunities to get a job. There are a lot of people with education, but sometimes they don't utilize that because they don't get the opportunities to work in their fields of qualifications, because maybe they don't know people in the system, which is another issue here. Is that you know, it's not always about what you know, is the connections, the social connection that you establish that sometimes matters. And that sometimes disadvantage people that are new because they still lacking that social networks.
Um, that actually, you've touched on something actually really important, because I always when I'm with my friends, we talk about actually a lot. Seeing so many newcomers coming to Canada, and then they are seeing what they expected. This, they expect to get into the job. They feel they deserve because of the qualifications they have from their country of origin. But them not having an opportunity to actually get the jobs they want. What advice now actually would you give to them to make sure that at least they can take the first steps to realizing their dreams, or maybe getting the jobs they do actually need or require or deserve, to grow professionally, but also as a Canadian or a new Canadian in Canada?
I think for newcomers, is settling in is not easy. It need to be accepted that you are
Mhm.
moved from wherever you come from to a new place. It's going to be a challenge cultural wise. It's going to be a challenge to build the network that you need. It's going to be a challenge to find the jobs of your dream. But if you are persistent, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to find it. Educate yourself, familiarize yourself with the system, and continue to connect with people to to build the social network that you need. It's also incumbent upon us as people that are here to make sure that we support the newcomer, especially if they have the qualification. I know sometimes people talk a lot here about Canadian experience. People that have worked in their countries of origin for so many years have done. Some are doctors, some are teachers, some are, you know, um, engineers, you name it. They come here, but they also be told that they need a Canadian qualification, even if they come here and have education again. We also, as a society, need to accept that, they have to be given the opportunity to gain that Canadian experience because if there is a standard of that. But I'm very sure people that have worked in their life for so many years, it will take them a very short time to appreciate the environment that they are working in here, and also to acquaint themselves with what is talked about as a Canadian experience.
Okay.
So it's both ways. It's for the newcomers to work hard to get what they need to get for them to be able to get their dream job. It's also incumbent upon all of us as a community to acknowledge that these people have experience and they need to be provided with that experience to gain more Canadian experience if there is a standard of that.
So now, for some of the recent newcomers to Canada who might not know what Canadian experience is, can you explain how can they get that Canadian experience?
This is a tough discussion because, like I said earlier, like
Mm.
how do you define that? You know, it's a combination of things in my view because every community has a different culture. Every community in a different part of the world have a different culture. So there are ways in which Canadians communicate, the way they conduct themselves, the way they do job, those kind of things. And those are some of the things that I said earlier that could be taught easily if someone is given the opportunity. So
Yeah.
it's just the soft skills, all those kind of things that are had to be quantified somehow, but they are in our mindset, right? That
Mm-hmm.
this is how we do things here. And I
But
think anybody that comes from a different place would also
mhm.
expect that they have moved to a different place, so they would also wanted to learn how people in that different place do things.
And I believe also maybe it's best to know they can also acquire more experience, Canadian experience, and Canadian living experience through volunteering, correct? Because that is one way of actually putting it on the resume to help them, get where they want to go.
Yes, volunteering. There are also agencies, organizations that do the training actually. they do the training of what this Canadian experience is. But yeah, getting volunteering with agencies in the area of your interest, sometimes it's not easy, especially for people that wanted to become, engineers. It's not easy to get a volunteer in engineering field, those kind of things. But that's one of the ways to go about.
Now, looking at the young boy who used to run around in his community. What was your community called, by the way? The name.
Uh, you mean the
But,
country
yeah.
where I came from?
Mm-hmm.
Dinka.
Dinka. So the community is Dinka, and your village's name was
My village name is Patia.
Patia. Okay, so now looking at the young boy in Patia, running around, growing up, and the man you are today, or the man who was in the refugee camp and the man you've become today, do you think your life turned out for better, or there is still more you yearn to do? Things you want to fulfill in life, you're still striving to work on.
Um, it's great to be here. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very thankful that I'm here. I'm have the education that I need. I'm raising my family here. There's peace here in Canada. This is something that is great. I appreciate that. I still think that I need to work more because, like today, I'm working on initiatives that uh, aim to bring peace in my country, stability. Those are some of my challenges and goals that I think that I need to do more. It's not easy. It's not something that you could measure to your success. You cannot say, okay, now I set a goal and here I achieve it. And this is shaped by the experience. Like I mentioned to you earlier, going through the war at a younger age, you have seen all the worst in life and living at refugee camps and but trying to balance that with what you knew before the war. You always feel like you wish that things turned to that time when there was no conflict in your village, when everybody was happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, life, they always say that Bhutanese are the happiest people on earth. Uh, you know, uh, Everybody want to be happy, and that is not easy if there is a war, if there's a conflict, if there are weak institutions. So those are some of the challenges that people that have gone, not all of us, but some of us that have gone through the difficulties always wanted to see things differently. You don't want your experience to be the experience of the next generation. You don't want any child to go through what you went through. You wish that things are different for the next young people to have stability, to live in peace, to live in communities where people support each other, where people share food. One time here I went to Haiti. I think that was 2009, and went to this town, and I wasn't happy. But when I went to the village, in one of the villages in Haiti, I was actually very happy because I saw a very encouraging lifestyle, life of sharing, life of supporting, even when there is limited resources, and you know um, people show love in a number of ways. That life is always inside me. I wanted to see something like that. I wanted to live in a place like that where people support each other, where you know uh, a family is not defined by the bloodlines, but also the experience of people that live with you, your neighbors, your friends, that kind of thing. These are my inner struggles. These are things that I wanted to achieve. I don't know how, but that's how it feels.
By any chance, have you connected with some of your friends? Maybe you end up, the friendships you built in the refugee or when you're fleeing. Have you connected with other lost boys of Sudan as we know them?
There are a number of them here in Winnipeg. There are a number of them here in Canada and in the US, in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, in Kenya, in Uganda. It's always it's- so you moved and established a family and a community in thousand, not hundreds of people, but thousands of people. And then you disperse again. People go to different directions. There's this there's a talk within the Lost Boy group that is sometimes very difficult to put the question and say where is you know Mr. So and so, because you might be told that he is dead, you know, because there
Mm-hmm.
were a number of us and people went different directions and quite a number of us died. So so yeah, so every time you meet one person, you talk, and then you ask for another one, and then you get the bad news. It's constant like that.
So, what would you want the Canadian community to know or to understand better about refugee matters or newcomer matters in Canada, or how to relate to newcomers in Canada? What would you tell them?
I would say that learn more. People that come from different cultures always have different ways of reacting to things. Or I will not generalize and say that the people that come from the war zone have the same experience. Some have different experience, and they also have different cultures. There are people that come from the cultures that don't want to share anything about themselves. But if you establish connection with them, you become friend with them, and you build trust with them, they'll be able to open up and talk to you about their experience and what they went through. And if you do that, you are helping them to become, a place where they feel that they are listened to, and they be able to share what is inside them, and that is good for them. So if you do that, so build trust with them, get to know them, build friendship with them, and let them and be genuine so that they trust you, because trust is a big thing for a number of people coming from different cultures. They wanted to be open to people that they trust.
Okay, before we wrap up and go, you actually, now I want to go back because you are a parent, someone who was born and raised, not only in Sudan, but you end up getting raised in camps and coming to Canada. Now you have children who are born in Canada and another one who was in the camp, but they're living in Canada with you. Are you instilling any of your culture in them, or are they just trying to be brought up in only the Canadian lifestyle?
This is always a struggle for a newcomer parents,
Mm-hmm.
because environment teach people on the top of what the parent do.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids go to school, they live here, they understand here, their understanding is fully of what is around them here. So it's always a challenge, but I think it's my responsibility. I try to make sure that my kids understand my journey. I talk to them about where I come from, sharing stories, about my experience, go hunting, go fishing, looking after cattle and goats, and, enjoying the community celebrations, all those kind of things. Plus, like I said earlier, the world is getting smaller, so there are also ways to connect with what is going back home. That are also cultural things that you could also show to your kid. So I'm trying. I am not saying that I'm succeeding, but I'm trying very hard to make sure that they understand where they come from. But I also need to acknowledge and accept that their environment here is different, from mine. One thing I always get reminded by my own children, about where I am when I am becoming so too much, Dinga or South Sudanese. They will tell you, but Dad, this is a different place.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a conversation between parents and kids, about how things should go. So it's a constant learning, it's a constant experience, and we'll see. Yeah.
Do you speak Dinka to them, or you only speak English?
Very much, I haven't managed to, impact that. They understand it, not so, not as I, had hoped for. But yeah, it's a journey. But I speak the language. Yes,
Do you think you ever take them to Sudan to show them where you came from?
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a definite one. Yeah, I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this has been interesting, quite a journey. It was sad, interesting, eye-opening for me actually to get actually to know you more on a personal level than before, because I didn't know actually your journey. I've just learned it with our followers and our supporters, or people who will be able to view this video. So also it's been an eye-opening for me. So I want to take this moment to thank you again, Reuben, for sitting down with us and actually sharing your journey, your experiences, and also shedding some light onto, those challenges people do face, though, especially those ones who are forced to flee from their home countries. So thank you, Reuben, for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me here. Appreciate the time. Mhm.
Yeah. So if our viewers have any questions in the future, or want to get to know more, or they want us to probably ask Reuben to come back and answer them, let us know and we'll be able to organize it. Thank you very much and have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye. Bye.